Back in 2013, Raz, MGTOW Dave, and I went down to Churchill Square with the intention of telling some slutwalkers that we loved sluts, because I knew that despite being a perfectly appropriate statement for an event like a slut walk,
and I love sluts. Read the sign. That's it. That's my message. I love sluts. Thank you. See? This guy gets it.
Is this slut is like an empowered woman who can have sex with who she wants when she wants? Is that
Sure.
what you mean? So you're just basically supporting femininity or feminism. That's
No, I'm supporting sluts.
that it would nonetheless provoke the feminist community to lie about us. I was right. Next up, alumnus Ryjin Van Der Hoek made a video attacking Men's Rights Edmonton with all kinds of easily refutable lies and attempts to paint what we did as harmful to women.
The sharing of stories is absolutely vital to our human survival, and you can't use the brick of logic to smash in the head of some chick who's trying to talk about her feelings.
A little while ago, I made a video called the Feminist Non-Feminist Cooperation Spiral, wherein I used a combat knife as a pointer. I did this knowing that it would be something the fembots could point to as some sort of evidence that I was deranged and dangerous. But regardless, activated non-feminists or the middle mass, they are not feminists. This is not feminism, which is why they comprise what is called the non-feminist sector. So, activated non-feminists, middle mass, and over here, feminism. I was right. I was referred to as a knife-wielding maniac, and others made fun of me because the knife I used belonged to my roommate. They did that because they were looking for anything to throw at me to make me look bad, and that's how desperate they were. And on February 7th, 2015, I made a video called I Am Anti-Feminist, That's It, wherein I made it very clear that I don't care about men. This statement, like the statement I love sluts, is true, and stated for the purpose of provoking the self-righteous, morality-policing section of the MGTOW phenomena into taking all kinds of ill-informed pot shots at me, and I was right. I had a bunch of guys tell me that I should stop using the name Men's Rights Edmonton because I admitted to being an uncaring monster. Now, I'll get back to them later, because what I didn't foresee was Barbarossa making a video wherein he respectfully disagreed with my position. I want to say that I disagree, or that I appreciate his treatment of both the video and the conflict that exists between the men's rights movement and certain MGTOW at this juncture. Even though I'm going to be pretty harsh with my response to what you said, Barbar, I want you to know that I think your video set a good example of how a disagreement should be handled. That said, I do take issue with a lot of your points. First of all, the way we handle feminism is not bickering with no end in sight. On the weekly hangout that Fiedelbogen and I do for A Voice for Men called the Vanguard Report, we prescribe a post-argumentalist standpoint. That doesn't mean that we never argue with feminists, but when we do, we certainly don't do it in the hopes that they'll change their minds. We do it to learn about them, to demoralize them, to publicly humiliate them, or to refute their dogma in the sight of neutral observers. I'm pretty confident that if you look over my body of work, you'll see that everything I've done has put feminist interests in increasingly precarious positions, and anti-feminist interests in increasingly advantageous positions. That's because it's not just bickering or whining or complaining or griping, as so many have put it, it's fighting a propaganda war. Western society is ostensibly egalitarian, but gynocentric in practice. The feminist lie that women currently get or have historically gotten the short end of the stick is what allows people to behave gynocentrically while appearing and feeling egalitarian. As long as the idea that women are second-class citizens remains orthodoxy, no headway towards helping men will be made, which is why so many MRAs prioritize this particular propaganda war, and it's not a war with no end in sight. I explained in my video, The Feminist Non-Feminist Cooperation Spiral, that the end is seeing feminism fall into the same disrepute as racism, and I explain how we get there. I'm confident that can happen in my lifetime, which is why I do everything I do with that goal in mind. Now, initially I was going to go over your entire video, but there's been all sorts of fallout and drama as a result of my making my last video. So for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to talk about specific parts of the video that you made, Barbar, because there's the bit about RBK that I want to talk about too. But there is this part that I take real issue with right here.
Now, as to your reference of Shrink for Men and Tom Golden's work, I'm not familiar with their work, so I'm not going to comment on them since I haven't sufficiently read either of them. But as far as equality is concerned...
Yeah, I know you're not familiar with Tom or Tara. That's the problem. That's why I brought them up. When you and your friends insist on pushing this broken narrative that AVFM does nothing to help men, and they're just arguing with feminists, it's painfully obvious that you're not familiar with the contributions of these psychotherapists who specialize in men's mental health have made to A Voice for Men. And when your response to my personal testimony that Dr. Tara's content on A Voice for Men has helped me is that you're not familiar with her work, so let's talk about my stance on equality, it's painfully obvious that you're just cherry picking. I invite you to familiarize yourself with the work of Drs. Golden and Palmatier, because maybe if you were a bit more familiar with their work, you wouldn't hold the flawed notions about AVFM that you do.
And so MRA technology is suffering from a guidance system that can be misdirected to splash comfortably in the ocean far, far away from their feminist targets, rendering them ineffective no matter the strength of their payload. This is why the internet aristocrat ran out of things to talk about, essentially. And this is why Thunderfoot, who I'm a huge fan of, right? I'm not bashing Thunderfoot at all. But this is why, for all of his efforts against Anita Sarkeesian, he's now greeted in his comment section with a non-trivial segment of his comment section every time he uploads a new Sarkeesian video, whining with, oh, not another Sarkeesian video, when are we going to get back to the science protest, right? This complaint. So essentially, if you bash Anita Sarkeesian long enough, then she gets exactly what she wants, the appearance of victimhood. Of course, also she's a female, so by default, our society is going to look at her more as the victim. Right, so there is a social inertia that you have to overcome just to get on equal footing.
While I agree with you insofar as saying Sarkeesian is getting exactly what she wants, I think your understanding of MRA technology, as you put it, is again flawed. I don't think that Thunderfoot's efforts are against Sarkeesian specifically. I think his efforts are against feminism itself. This is why I'm always making very clear that I'm not fighting feminists, I'm fighting feminism. Yes, Anita is going to continue making loads of money for selling people empty promises, and the damseling is going to make her even more money, and she's going to laugh all the way to the bank, and she's probably never going to face any consequences. But when she does that, and she makes it so ass-bendingly obvious that she is scamming these people and successfully relying on everything that you just described, and Thunderfoot exposes it, more and more people are watching, and they're seeing just how far she can take this routine, and many of those people self-select into internet communities who know that, and they know that she's full of shit, and they're not afraid to say so. That's what we call building the non-feminist sector. I know you don't like that non-feminist term, but again, I encourage you to watch my cooperation spiral video, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
But one has to wonder how this differs from someone calling themselves a civil rights activist at the height of the civil rights movement, telling blacks, for example, that he doesn't care about blacks, he only cares about making the KKK look bad. People are naturally going to assess that statement as, well, this guy isn't really our ally. If it ever got to the point where the discrediting of the KKK ran counter to the interests of civil rights activists, then he wouldn't only not be our ally, but he would be a self-professed enemy.
It's interesting that you use the example of the civil rights movement, because when I started my activism, I thought about the way that movement has gone over the years. It started with guys like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and now it's Al fucking Sharpton. I looked at that movement, and I think that placing such value on being pro-black, like pro-black people, is specifically, it's exactly what turned that movement into the joke that it is today. Like, I don't agree with Bernard Chapin on much, but I do agree that the whole, really caring about people angle is more often than not just a bunch of moral posturing and false piety. That's what gives hucksters like the LGBT hypocrites, the liberal poverty pimps, and our friends the feminists the moral right of way, in their estimation, to mistreat and malign anybody they deem as not even, really caring about group X, Y, or Z, and that's exactly what's being cultivated by Blade Kandy and the other MGTOW. Not all the other MGTOW, just, this section. I listen to your videos, Barbar, and I know that you value community building, and that is the cornerstone of the Men's Rights Edmonton project, including introducing activated non-feminists to each other on a local geographic scale so that they can form communities. We get attention any way we can so people of like mind can hear about our website and drop us a line, which leads to them becoming part of the growing activated non-feminist community here in Edmonton. And there is one. Karen Strawn already knew some of the Father's Rights guys here in town, but I introduced them to Razlo, Dave the MGTOW, Mr. Infamies, that's the guy who made the original Don't Be That Girl posters that got international media attention, and our pal Nephinor. Now, all the activism that we do is just for the purpose of self-promotion, yes. But it has to be of substance to adequately serve as promotional material. So a lot of the times that promotion has been, in the form of agitating the feminist sector, because when you piss them off, they reward you with shitloads of publicity. So, the first time that me and Raz went out putting up posters we got from AVFM, local feminists started forming groups just to fight us. Later on, when I put the addresses to AVFM and Men's Rights Edmonton on posters for the Fringe Theatre Festival, we got in the news for the first time. Then I started this YouTube channel to capitalize on our making the papers, and I used it to confront local feminists and challenge them to debates, but I also used it to publicize Earl Silverman's MASH house and its need for financial contributions. Yeah, that's right. Back in 2012, I took a bus to Calgary where I met Earl and had dinner with him and a couple of his friends, and then I stayed the night at his place, and then I shot a video with him where he explained his One Brick Short funding campaign or funding program. I'll put a link to that video in the low bar, but the only people in the manosphere that were promoting Earl's shelter before he killed himself and became a talking point for all the people who really care, was me and Karen and the Mad Shangy and AVFM. I don't remember any of the people who were jumping down my throat for not fucking caring enough promoting Earl's project while he could have used the help. Not one of them. Like, you say that our obsession with feminism is like a religion, but it's Blade Kandy who's saying that all my good works are like filthy rags because I don't truly care in my heart. All these retards who are so angry at me for saying that I don't care about men are taking a confession of caring, which is a completely unfalsifiable claim, by the way, as more important than tangible results, like getting Karen Strawn on the news, like getting people all over the Western world talking about the overt misandry in federally funded propaganda. Not to mention that the template of organizing that Men's Rights Edmonton pioneered has inspired imitators all over Canada, Ireland, and Australia. But fuck all that shit, right? That guy Nick said that he didn't care about men, and that makes him just awful. I understand, by the way, I understand Barbar, that's not your opinion, but this is the opinion of a big section of the MGTOW community. What really pisses me off is that, I went through this same thing when Raz, the hardest working guy in Men's Rights Edmonton, decided that he wasn't going to help us anymore because I refused to make Men's Rights Edmonton a hard right-wing entity. Seriously, he listens to anything Chapin says as gospel, so he thinks that AVFM are traitors to men because they wouldn't kick out all the lefties, just like these certain MGTOW are declaring AVFM traitors because they won't kick out all the tradcons. Now, I've never argued against the concept of MGTOW because I guess I am one. I agree that tuning in, turning on, and dropping out is a powerful means of change. But I fight feminism largely because I enjoy doing it. I'm good at it. I've made friends doing it. I find it fulfilling. And there's a section of the MGTOW community, that section that really cares about men, and they think that's just awful.
Let me give you an example of how the men's rights movement has slowly morphed into the ineffective, sticking it to Tumblr and Twitter feminist movement. An example of this is how the men's rights organization Cafe placed an award for the arrest and conviction of the MRA that some feminists said crept up on her in the dark of night and, punched her or assaulted her or whatever. Now look at what's being done here. It's so important to these people to tarnish feminism that they're willing to place men at risk in doing so in a supposed movement for men and boys. And don't get me wrong, I understand what they were trying to achieve in doing this. I understand that they were banking on the attack being manufactured. I know they were depending on the fact that feminists tend to manufacture male aggression for attention and financial gain in victimology, right? So they put the reward up, speculating that no one would collect it based on the likely behavior of feminists, or should I say a likely behavior of feminists that manufactures victimhood. So I know very well what they were trying to achieve. I know what they were banking on. And I also know that another likely feminist behavior, and I'm sure this came up during the conversation surrounding the decision to post this reward, at least if these MRAs were worth their salt, another likely behavior is the framing of men and falsely accusing men of crimes they didn't commit and having them tossed in jail even though they're innocent. And so the people who posted this reward must have decided then that it's an acceptable risk to provide a financial incentive for feminists to falsely accuse a man of assault, an assault they believe didn't even occur. They had to consider the fact that feminists could have said, okay, these MRAs are posting a reward. Let's just say that it was this poor schmuck who did it, right? Who cares? He's a man, he's an oppressor anyway, right? And all to do what? All to do what? Score a blow against feminists?
No, not to just score a blow against feminists. Clearing your name is not the same thing as smearing your accuser. In the instance you're referring to, feminist Danielle d'Entremont posted images of herself with various injuries to social media, and the feminist community immediately began pointing the finger at MRAs because there was an upcoming lecture by Janice Fiamengo at Queen's University that they wanted to prevent from happening. You say that this had the potential to land some guy in jail, and that the people who put out the reward consider that an acceptable risk, and that's not the case. Feminists are bullies, and the mentality of a bully is such that they are not looking for a victory, but a victim. That is to say that when they mean someone harm, they're not so dedicated to the task as to persist in the face of adversity. They want to point the finger at some person or some group of people, cry victim, and have the world listen and believe. End of story. And when that's not going to be the end of the story, when this is a case that has the attention of a media outlet like A Voice for Men, it becomes too high risk for the feminist bullies, and they predictably retreat. That's exactly what happened in this case, which is why it irks me that you talk about it like it was merely what those offering the reward were counting on or banking on. It actually fucking happened. Okay? You know, this is part of a pattern of behavior on the part of certain MGTOW whereby legitimate actions by MRAs are described as nothing more than pissing contests or bickering or petty point scoring. You know, these things have purpose, and I'm proud to work with the people who do them. Now, you guys are justifiably upset with Aaron Clary and Paul Elam for saying that you're a bunch of angry virgins. Like I said in my last video, I'm not exactly a ladies' man, so it bothers me when they talk like that too. You know, I don't know what to tell you. Blade Kandy compared me to Elliot Rodger, and he went on and on and on about how I'm probably a sociopath, and I'm not going to spend, you know, the rest of my activist career bitching about it. Okay? You know, you do have the right to be upset with Fiedelbogen too, lecturing you on, you know, what to talk about and old school MGTOW and all that, and he's told me that he's done with it. He's done telling MGTOW their business, and I think that's best. There is one more thing that I want to clear up here. I don't think that feminism is the one and only problem afflicting men. I'm not trying to convince you guys to join my fight against feminism because, as far as I'm concerned, you're already helping. You already think that feminism is harmful bullshit, and you're not afraid to say so. So Barbarossa, I wish you luck with your new website. Even though it's been pretty harsh, even though I've been pretty harsh with some of what you have to say, I think you have a lot of good insights, and I hope you continue to proliferate your ideas. Nick Redding, mensrightsedmonton.com.